I think he'll change. He is committed of his own level of service. And
The document was ready. The royal seal had been prepared. King Charles needed only to sign his name, and Camilla would become head trustee of one of the monarchy's most guarded family institutions. But before the pen could touch the page, Princess Anne stepped forward and stopped him. Her objection was not whispered through an aide or delayed until another meeting. She challenged the decision directly and demanded that the entire royal family be given a vote. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles had gathered household officials inside Windsor Castle because he expected quiet approval. The Royal Heritage Trust, a family body responsible for residences, private archives, ceremonial objects, and inherited collections, was about to receive a new leader. That position mattered because the head trustee could influence archive access, preservation decisions, appointments, and the future of possessions belonging to the entire dynasty. Anne watched the king lift the pen. She waited until his hand moved toward the appointment instrument, the formal document granting authority, then placed her palm beside the signature line. "This cannot proceed without a family vote," she said. Her voice remained low, but the words struck the room harder than anger. Charles lowered the pen slowly. Disbelief crossed his face before fury reached it. He turned toward his sister and asked whether she was questioning his authority as monarch. The accusation wounded Anne, yet she did not move her hand. She answered that she was protecting a shared inheritance, not attacking the crown or humiliating her brother. Camilla entered moments later expecting confirmation. Charles had already told the Queen in a recorded private conversation that the role was hers. Instead, she found the seal untouched, the document unsigned, and Anne standing between her and the most powerful trusteeship of her royal life. The Queen consort stopped beside the table as the silence revealed what had happened. Anne opened her leather file and removed a folded voting memorandum, a written record explaining who must be consulted before shared family powers change hands. One clause required eligible senior royals to approve appointments affecting collective trusts. Charles read it once, then again. His expression tightened. Camilla looked at Anne and asked who had given her the document. The question exposed a fear. Someone within the palace had prepared the Princess Royal to stop the king before the decision became permanent. The pen had been stopped, but the deeper confrontation was only beginning. Because behind that unsigned document stood three people, carrying very different ideas of loyalty, marriage, duty, and royal power. To the officials watching from the edge of the room, the dispute concerned governance. To Charles, Anne, and Camilla, it was painfully personal. The king saw the appointment as an act of trust toward his wife. The Princess Royal saw it as a dangerous surrender of family authority. And the Queen, standing only feet from the chair she believed was already hers, understood that Anne's intervention carried a message far greater than one postponed signature. Charles had never viewed the role as a simple promotion. He believed Camilla had endured years of public suspicion, private judgment, and quiet exclusion, and he wanted the appointment to prove that she no longer stood at the edge of royal life. The head trustee, the person responsible for guiding access, appointments, and long-term decisions within the family trust, would hold influence that reached far beyond ceremony. To him, giving her that authority was an act of loyalty. Anne understood that loyalty. That was what made the moment hurt. She had spent decades defending the belief that royal archives, inherited possessions, and family duties must survive every reign and every marriage. The trust was not a personal reward. It belonged to the dynasty, and the Princess Royal feared her brother was allowing love to shape a decision that demanded distance. Camilla entered with a restrained smile, expecting the room to confirm what Charles had already promised. Then she saw the unsigned document. Her fingers tightened around the back of a chair, and the smile vanished before anyone spoke. The Queen looked first at the king, then at Anne, and understood immediately that the appointment had been stopped. Charles moved toward his wife as though he could shield her from the humiliation. He explained that the delay was procedural, but Camilla heard the hesitation beneath his words. She asked whether William knew. The question landed heavily because William, as the future king, represented the next reign and the future direction of the family's inheritance. If he supported Anne, then this was not one woman's objection. It was a deeper resistance. Anne watched her brother defend the Queen and felt a private sadness. She knew why he wanted to elevate Camilla. She also knew affection had clouded his judgment. Charles finally admitted that he had not consulted William, Edward, Sophie, or any wider family member. He had expected his decision to be accepted, because it was his to make. Anne reached for an empty chair and pulled it beside the table. "Every empty seat is part of the problem," she told him. "They were never asked." Camilla stared at the chair, then turned to the Princess Royal. Humiliation hardened into anger. She warned Anne that she had misunderstood both the position and the consequences of blocking it. Yet Anne had not acted because of a vague fear or an old family rivalry. She had acted because of one specific incident that convinced her the trust was already being pulled in a dangerous direction. The confrontation at Windsor did not begin with the unsigned appointment. Its true origin lay 3 weeks earlier, during a private trustees' dinner at Sandringham. What should have been a ceremonial discussion about preservation became the moment Anne realized that Camilla was preparing to exercise powers she had not yet received. One instruction, delivered across a polished dining table, changed everything. From that evening onward, the Princess Royal believed silence would no longer protect the family, it would endanger it. Camilla had joined Anne, Edward, 2 senior custodians, and the trust secretary for what appeared to be a routine working dinner. The trustees meeting a private gathering where those responsible for royal property discuss its care and management was meant to cover repairs, archive access, and the movement of historic objects between residences. Charles was absent at another engagement, and no leadership appointment appeared on the official agenda. The Queen allowed the early discussion to pass without tension. Then she turned toward the secretary and instructed him to prepare revised access rules for several private collections. Under her proposal, letters associated with Queen Elizabeth II and Diana would require the exclusive approval of the future head trustee before any family member could examine them. Anne set down her glass. The sound was small, but Edward immediately sensed the shift. The Princess Royal asked why such rules were being drafted when no new leader had been formally chosen. Camilla answered that preparation was necessary because the decision had effectively already been made. Edward tried to soften the exchange. He suggested the instruction might be simple administration rather than a final policy. Anne rejected that explanation. She knew those archives held personal correspondence capable of shaping how past generations were remembered, and control over them could influence William, his children, and the monarchy's future story. Camilla insisted that sensitive material needed order. The Queen argued that too many people had enjoyed informal access for too long. Anne replied that family history could not be reorganized through a private instruction delivered before dinner had ended. The trust secretary waited until the others had left. Then he approached Anne in the corridor and showed her a draft cover page naming Camilla as the incoming head trustee. The documented account carried no voting record, no consultation list, and no supporting signature from another senior royal. Anne asked whether Charles knew. The secretary confirmed that the king had verbally approved the transition and intended to complete it quietly before informing the wider family. The Princess Royal folded the page in half and placed it inside her handbag. She told him not to destroy a single earlier version of the proposed rules. That hidden document would become the evidence she carried into Windsor. Once Camilla discovered it existed, the dispute changed completely. When the 3 principals returned to the same room, the issue was no longer procedure. It was trust, and every carefully controlled emotion was about to break through. The officials were asked to leave. The doors closed. For the first time since the appointment was stopped, Anne, Charles, and Camilla stood together, without secretaries, advisors, or ceremonial language to protect them. The Queen demanded to see the paper taken from Sandringham. The Princess Royal refused to surrender it. And between them, the king faced an impossible choice: defend the wife he had elevated, or listen to the sister who had never challenged him without cause. Charles ordered the chamber cleared because he still believed the dispute could remain inside the family. Without aides present, every word carried more weight. Camilla accused Anne of gathering internal documents to destroy an appointment the monarch had every right to make. She insisted the revised access rules were only a preliminary draft, not proof of any secret plan. Anne placed the Sandringham page on the table, but kept 2 fingers pressed against it. The document outlined proposed limits on private royal collections, including letters tied to Queen Elizabeth II and Diana. Those archives mattered because they held family memories, private decisions, and records capable of shaping how future generations understood the monarchy. The Princess Royal told Camilla that preparing to control them before receiving authority revealed intention, not efficiency. Camilla's composure finally cracked. She asked whether she would ever be trusted, no matter how many years she stood beside Charles, or how many duties she carried in service to the crown. The Queen's anger came from humiliation, but beneath it sat something more painful, the fear that the family still saw her as temporary. Anne felt the force of that wound, yet she refused to step back. She revealed that the proposed rules would have allowed the head trustee to restrict even William and Catherine from viewing certain family materials without written approval. The future king and his wife would have needed permission to examine parts of their own inheritance. Charles turned toward Camilla. He admitted he had never read the full revision. His silence exposed the truth. The king had approved her appointment without understanding the powers being built around it. Camilla reached for the page, but Anne slid it toward her brother instead. Charles read the marked paragraph twice, removed his glasses, and placed them beside the unsigned document. The king asked whether his wife had requested exclusive control. Camilla answered that she had requested order. Anne replied at once. Royal order without accountability becomes personal rule. Charles postponed the appointment, but he refused to cancel it. He declared that the trust's governing instrument, the formal set of rules controlling how the institution operates, would be examined to determine whether Anne truly had the power to demand a family vote. The argument had exposed the emotional wound, but the next battle would be colder and more dangerous, because control would now depend on old rules, hidden clauses, and the people empowered to interpret them. By the following morning, the conflict had moved from the family chamber to the trust archive. There, beneath decades of amendments and ceremonial signatures, lay the rule that could either restore Charles's decision or destroy it. The king believed the crown carried final authority. Anne believed the trust belonged to the family across generations. Only one interpretation could prevail. The man asked to deliver it. It knew that whichever side lost would never forget his words. Sir Jonathan Hale arrived at Windsor before breakfast, carrying 3 bound volumes against his chest. As senior legal custodian, he was responsible for explaining the trust's governing charter, the written rules defining who could exercise power, and how major decisions had to be approved. He paused before sitting, because he understood that his answer could divide the family. Charles did not offer him time to settle. The king asked one narrow question. Could the sovereign appoint the head trustee alone? His tone was clipped and controlled. He wanted a verdict, not a history lesson, because every delay increased Camilla's humiliation and made Anne's challenge appear stronger. Anne waited beside the fireplace without speaking. The Princess Royal looked calm, but she knew what a ruling against her would mean. She would not simply lose the argument. She would appear reckless, disloyal, and willing to embarrass her brother without legal cause. Sir Jonathan opened the first volume and explained that the trust remained connected to the monarchy while protecting assets for several generations. That distinction mattered because a reigning sovereign could guide the institution, but shared family property could not always be treated as a personal possession. Charles repeated the question. The monarch could nominate a candidate, the custodian answered, but the original charter required approval from a majority of designated senior family trustees whenever that candidate was the sovereign's spouse. The silence hardened. Sir Jonathan turned to a later amendment. It had preserved the same safeguard to prevent marital influence from becoming permanent institutional control. The clause did not accuse any spouse of wrongdoing. It existed because private devotion and inherited authority could become dangerously difficult to separate. Anne finally looked toward her brother. She said nothing, but Charles understood. Her demand had not been invented to block Camilla. It had been protected in writing long before this conflict began. Sir Jonathan opened the oldest volume, turned it toward the king, and tapped the words, familial consent, formal approval from the eligible members of the family. Charles read the sentence, closed the book, and pushed the unsigned appointment away. Anne's demand for a vote was valid. Camilla could not become head trustee unless the designated royals approved her. The ruling settled the procedure, but it opened a more painful question. Who would support the Queen when the private ballot was called? With the king's authority restrained by the charter, loyalties that had remained politely hidden were suddenly forced into the open, and the first consequences struck Camilla before a single vote was cast. News of the required vote moved through the private households long before it reached the public. Invitations were delivered. Calls were made. Conversations stopped when doors opened. Camilla had expected a formal announcement confirming her promotion. Instead, she found herself becoming a candidate required to seek approval from relatives who had never been asked whether they trusted her. For the Queen, the change was not merely procedural. It felt like a judgment on her entire place within the family. Camilla sat alone in her private drawing room, with the voting list resting across her knees. Charles, Anne, William, Edward, Catherine, and Sophie formed the eligible group, although the king could nominate his wife without casting a deciding vote in her favor. That safeguard mattered because it prevented the monarch's personal loyalty from determining control over property and records belonging to future generations. The Queen read each name slowly. Her expression tightened when she reached William and Catherine. The prince represented the next reign, while the Princess of Wales carried growing influence within the family. Their decision would not simply affect one appointment. It would reveal whether the future monarchy trusted Camilla with its history. Charles entered and promised to speak with the voters personally. He believed he could explain her intentions and prevent the dispute from becoming a rejection of their marriage. Camilla stopped him. She told the king not to beg on her behalf, because pressure from him would make her authority appear borrowed before she had even received it. Edward sought out Anne before the ballot papers were distributed. In a private recorded conversation prepared for the family file, he admitted that he could not support exclusive control over the archives. Yet he feared that opposing Camilla would wound Charles and permanently alter the bond between the brothers. Anne told him that loyalty measured by silence was not loyalty at all. Sophie studied the Queen's written leadership statement later that afternoon. The document, a formal explanation of how a candidate intends to use a position, promised stability, order, and careful preservation. But the trusted confidant noticed one dangerous absence. Camilla never promised to withdraw the proposed archive restrictions. The omission changed everything. Camilla opened her desk drawer and removed the acceptance speech she had prepared days earlier. She read the opening sentence, held the page for several seconds, then slowly tore it in half. For the first time, the Queen accepted that the role might never become hers. Charles canceled the announcement planned for the following week. Staff removed the transition from the palace briefing calendar, turning what had once seemed certain into an empty space no one could explain publicly. Then William sent one final request. He wanted to meet his father before the vote with no advisors, no secretaries, and no spouses present. The ballot could determine Camilla's position, but the monarchy's emotional direction would be decided first, in a silent room where a father and son finally confronted what the appointment had come to represent. There were no folders on the table when William entered his father's private sitting room. No lawyers waited outside. No officials had prepared talking points. Charles had requested loyalty. His son arrived carrying honesty. For years, the two men had navigated duty through careful language and unfinished conversations. But now the future king had to tell the present monarch why making Camilla head trustee without a family vote had shaken more than confidence. It had reopened questions about inheritance, memory, and fairness. William chose his first words carefully. His concern was not simply Camilla's identity, he explained, but the amount of authority being placed in one pair of hands. The archives contained letters connected to his mother, records belonging to his grandparents, and material that could shape how his children understood their own family. The head trustee, the person with final influence over access and preservation, would hold power reaching into the next reign. Charles listened without interruption. The king answered that the position had never been designed as a weapon. He had wanted to give his wife purpose, security, and visible recognition after years of public pressure. Camilla had stood beside him through hostility and judgment, and he believed the appointment would prove that her service was finally trusted. William lowered his voice. Love could justify protection, he said, but it could not replace consent. The prince knew his father would hear more than procedural criticism. The words touched the monarch's judgment, his marriage, and the private promise he had made to the Queen. Charles looked away. He admitted through their private recorded conversation that he had wanted to spare Camilla another test of acceptance. Forcing her to seek approval from the family felt cruel after everything she had endured. Yet avoiding the vote had created something worse. It had made the coming rejection feel like an exposure rather than a decision. William then gave his answer. He would not approve the appointment unless the archive restrictions were withdrawn and the head trustee's powers were divided among several family members. Shared stewardship authority, spread across more than one person, would protect the trust from personal pressure and preserve confidence across generations. Charles confessed that Camilla still believed the restrictions were necessary. The admission proved the dispute could not be solved merely by changing the voting process. The Queen still wanted the central power that had first alarmed Anne. Silence filled the room. Charles opened a drawer and removed the unsigned appointment instrument. He placed the document between them and asked whether the monarchy had become afraid to trust him. William met his father's gaze. "The family is asking you to trust them in return." The answer changed something. Charles finally understood that Anne's challenge was not rebellion. It was a demand for shared responsibility. The king decided he would not campaign for votes. He would let the family choose freely and accept the result, even if it humiliated both him and Camilla. Once Charles withdrew his pressure, the private dispute could no longer be contained, and when the story reached the public, one image outside Windsor captured the national mood more powerfully than any palace statement. By noon, the secret appointment had become the nation's leading royal story. Broadcasters spoke of an unprecedented family intervention. Newspapers framed the conflict as a struggle between personal loyalty and constitutional restraint. Yet the moment that defined the public reaction did not occur inside a studio. It happened outside Windsor Castle, where a crowd gathered beneath the stone walls as one newspaper front page was raised above the barriers for everyone to see. The palace released a restrained statement confirming that leadership of the Royal Heritage Trust would be decided through its established family voting procedure. That procedure, a formal ballot among eligible senior royals, mattered because it prevented one person from controlling property and records belonging to the wider dynasty. The carefully chosen words avoided blame, but they confirmed that Anne had stopped Charles from acting alone. News presenters focused on four explosive details: the Princess Royal's intervention, the King's attempted nomination, Camilla's proposed archive powers, and the family vote now standing between the Queen and the position. What began as a private disagreement had become a national argument about whether love had been allowed to reach too deeply into royal authority. Outside Windsor, one woman lifted a copy of the fictional London Chronicle above the security barrier. The front page carried Anne's photograph beneath four words printed in heavy black letters. The signature she stopped. The crowd reacted immediately. Some praised the Princess Royal for protecting the monarchy from unchecked influence. Others argued that she had weakened her brother by turning a family dispute into a public test of his judgment. When Anne's car passed through the gates, a wave of applause rose from one side of the road. The other side remained silent, aware that victory for her meant humiliation for Charles and Camilla. Anne heard the applause through a partially opened window inside the castle. She did not smile. The Princess Royal closed it quietly, troubled that a painful act of duty had become a public triumph attached to her name. Camilla watched a broadcaster describe the blocked appointment as a test of royal trust. The Queen remained still until the discussion turned toward Diana's letters and the proposed archive restrictions. Then she reached for the remote and switched off the television. The palace confirmed that the vote had already taken place. Its result was sealed and would be delivered privately to Charles and his wife before any public announcement. Anne received no warning. She waited with Edward and Sophie in another room, proving that even the woman who forced the ballot could not control its outcome. A senior custodian carried the sealed envelope toward Charles's study. Camilla sat beside the king, preparing to learn whether the family had accepted her or rejected her completely. The public had chosen its symbols and the family had cast its votes, but only the sealed decision could determine whether Anne's intervention ended in reconciliation, defeat, or a permanent fracture at the heart of the crown. The envelope was opened in complete silence. Charles read the result first, his expression revealing nothing until he placed the page on the table between himself and Camilla. The family had voted. The appointment had failed. Camilla would not become head trustee, and the proposed access restrictions would be withdrawn. Yet the verdict was not written as a punishment. It contained a second decision, one designed to preserve her dignity, while ensuring that no single royal could control the family's shared inheritance again. Camilla read the page without speaking. The ballot had rejected her appointment by a clear majority, citing the need for collective oversight and unrestricted access for future generations. That decision mattered, because the trust protected family records, inherited possessions, and historic collections, that would outlive every person currently serving the crown. No marriage, reign, or private promise could be allowed to control them permanently. Charles watched his wife fold the result with painful care. The Queen admitted that she had mistaken recognition for authority. She had believed the title would finally prove that she belonged, yet the family had judged the power attached to the office, rather than her position beside the king. The monarch lowered his head. He acknowledged that he had tried to protect Camilla from another test of acceptance, and had instead placed her before a harsher one. Charles accepted responsibility for bypassing the family, and formally withdrew his nomination in a written declaration preserved with the voting record. Anne met Camilla privately after the result. The Princess Royal did not apologize for stopping the appointment, because doing so would have betrayed the reason she acted. But she told the Queen that rejection from one office did not erase her place beside Charles or diminish the duties she had already carried. Camilla returned the unsigned appointment document to her husband. He placed it in the fireplace, watched the edges darken, then reached for her hand. The title disappeared in the flames, but their marriage remained. Anne refused personal control of the trust. She supported a 3-person stewardship council, a shared leadership group made up of herself, William, and Edward, with every major decision requiring recorded approval. Her refusal proved that she had never challenged Camilla to replace her. William backed a new written safeguard requiring consultation whenever a royal spouse or direct heir was nominated to a powerful family position. The future king believed trust could survive only when authority remained accountable. The crisis did not destroy the monarchy. It taught the family to separate devotion from entitlement and authority from ownership. Charles remained king. Camilla remained queen. Anne remained the sister willing to say no when silence would have been easier. The document was never signed, yet its failure preserved something greater than an appointment. A monarchy in which loyalty could survive disagreement, dignity could survive rejection, and family duty could still stand above personal power. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.